participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any political party or candidate for public office. The State League also sponsors an online voters website with candidate and issue information on vote411.org. Could I ask you to mute? Okay, all right, thank you. The procedure for this forum: League members have prepared questions which were not given out in advance. Prior to the forum, we invited questions and topics via email. Candidates will have 2 minutes each to answer each question. There will be a 2-minute opening and a 2-minute closing statement. We have a timer, and this is our 4th forum, and we've had issues on the other 3 with giving signals when the 2 minutes is up. So I will be using a visual signal this time. Okay, please remember, candidates, to mute yourself when you're not talking. This was a problem yesterday. Okay, so I think we have the candidates here. This is the forum for the 19th Legislative District State Representative, Position 1. I know that we have Mr. Bryson here, and we have Mr. Walsh. I'm not sure if we have Miss Everson. Oh, there she is. Yeah, okay, yeah. We do have Miss Everson. Okay, all right. So please remember to, as I said, to mute yourself when you're not speaking. Okay, and so we will start with the 2-minute opening statements, which will start with Mr. Bryson. 2 minutes.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum today. I appreciate the opportunity to get our message out. I'm Clint Bryson. I'm a lifelong resident of Montesano, where I live with my wife, Nancy, and 3 daughters, 2 of whom are college aged, and 1 is going to be a sophomore at Montesano High School. When I graduated high school in 1990, I was faced, like everyone else is, with what comes next. For myself, that choice was an electrical apprenticeship, which has served me well on a career path. I worked as an electrician from 1995 until about 2008 as a foreman and general foreman on a variety of projects, primarily in Grays Harbor and Pacific counties. In 2008, I became a full-time union representative with IBEW Local 76. Some of my duties include lobbying on behalf of my fellow workers in Olympia or Washington, D.C. on safety and health issues, pension issues, healthcare, and economic development as well. In 2017, I became a Montesano City Councilman, which has been very eye-opening as far as the issues that face local government. I've served on the Forestry, Finance, Public Works committees, as well as the Shorelines Management Work Group. You know, we have a lot of work to do here in the 19th, but the 3 issues that really rise to the top for me are economic development, meaning jobs, family wage jobs, education and healthcare, and I think those all go together quite well. Economic development, we need to do a better job of providing pathways to success. You know, education is a major component of that. You know, we need to continue to support our colleges, our affordable college options, but also technical and trade schools, apprenticeships, and job-based training. You know, that our healthcare needs in rural areas are often underserved. We struggle to have enough providers in the area. We need to recognize that our healthcare infrastructure really is critical infrastructure. The COVID crisis has really amplified that need and emphasized how important it is to protect that. I know there have been times when I've felt left behind by politicians in Olympia, and I'm running to fight for our values and make sure we're heard in Olympia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Ms. Everson, 2-minute opening statement.
Hello, I'm Marianna Everson. I'm a psychiatric registered nurse here in Grays Harbor County. Grew up here in Montesano as well. I struggled in my early years to make a living wage. I was stuck in dead-end jobs and all of that. Struggled to pay for college. Finally ended up having the most desperate situation of my lifetime in 2006 situation. So I think that helps to make me uniquely qualified for this moment in our history. It makes me qualified to understand what it's like to be at the bottom and how to get ourselves out of that situation. I will fight for the people of Washington, for the people of LD19, for investments in us instead of cuts to our current programs. I know that's going to be a lot of work, and I'm ready to do it. I work full time as a nurse now. I'm doing this campaign. I never stop working, and I know that I never will. I will keep fighting for the people of this district because they deserve it. We all deserve it, and we need to be able to have dignified lives here.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, 2-minute opening statement. Mr. Walsh, are you still there? Mr. Walsh?
I am, Sharon. I'm having some difficulty with the connection, but I'm Jim Walsh. I've been the state representative from the 19th, position 1, for 4 years now, and we've been fighting the good fight for 4 years. We've been
Okay, I can't hear you anymore. Mr. Walsh, I can't hear you anymore.
and against this administration's, bad policy for all of our industry here in this part of Washington. And I'm happy to continue to fight for this area, for the families of this area, for the working people of this area, for the business owners of this area, against the really untrammeled and out of control bureaucracy of the administration and its staffers who really don't do a good job of running the agencies of the state and certainly don't reflect the values of this area.
Okay, thank you. First question, we'll start with Mr. Bryson. State legislators must work cooperatively with a variety of elected officials, including those at the county and city level. How will your communication skills, ability to work cooperatively, and leadership style benefit your district?
That's a great question because I think that's really important. Too often we have politics that leaves us divided and makes it difficult to have those conversations. I think it's important to dig in and get the work done. I've been working since 2008 as a union representative, and the majority of the time in those conversations, I have opposing viewpoints in the room. And so really it's a matter of listening, respecting other opinions, and figuring out what it takes to get the job done, what's best for the people. And that's really what we're tasked with doing. So it shouldn't be about politics, it should be about service, and that's what I intend to do.
Thank you. Ms. Everson, same question.
All I've been doing for the last number of years is working to bring people together. I've learned a lot in the last few years about differing opinions and ways of thinking, and I believe that when we talk about the issues, when we talk about the things that affect us all, we agree way more often than we disagree. We just have to take the time to sit down and really hear each other and listen to what people are saying and try to come to some sort of plan that everybody has ownership of to go forward. There aren't very many people that I know that I can't find agreements with, even people that were supposed to be on the other side. So I will continue that work in a cooperative manner and make sure that the people of LD19 and Washington get the best shot at a good life.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, did you hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody wants to bring people together. The question is, do you abandon the values of your district in an attempt to do the service of other interests?
Okay. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Everson. What have we learned from the current pandemic, and how might
The best way to bring people together is to know what you stand for.
Mr. Walsh, are you still talking?
No, I'm finished.
Okay. Yes, well, you cut out there in the middle, so I didn't know whether you were finished or not. Okay, Ms. Everson, second question, starting with you. What have we learned from the current pandemic, and how might the state's response be different for the next pandemic, emergency, or economic downturn?
We have learned that employer-based health insurance does not cover everyone. I wish we had learned that before, but I am for a health insurance program that is not for profit, that covers every person in the state and makes sure that everybody has the care that they need and leaves out the profit margin of the big industries that make money off of us. If we have, when I'm in the legislature, I will fight for whole Washington, which is a single payer, as close as the state can get to a single payer system that's not for profit and covers everyone. And if we had had that in place, so many people would be in a much better place right now, and the state would have saved almost exactly the same amount of money that we are in deficit now. So I will fight to improve the healthcare system for every person in Washington. I will fight to strengthen our public health systems with that savings. And I will make sure that my patients don't have to go into debt or die because they don't have health coverage.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, same question.
Well, we hear a lot about healthcare reform, but what we've got mostly in the 19th if you're not providing, if you don't have the providers to supply medical, healthcare and medical services, a card doesn't mean anything. And when I talk to the people of this district, what they tell me about is the problem isn't the card. The problem isn't having insurance. They have some form of it, whether it's Apple Care or otherwise. It's finding the providers. And so what I've been focused for these last several years is on improving the infrastructure for the healthcare in our district and trying to reform our method of finance through Apple Care or through private health insurance so that we've got more providers here. That's the problem. We don't have enough providers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bryson, same question.
Thank you. I think it's really magnified the importance of our public health system, the ability to respond to the outbreak, to be able to have enough testing in a timely manner so people know if they've been infected and if they need to remain quarantined, the ability to notify others who may have been exposed and respond to the hot spots around the state. It's also showing how fragile our social safety net systems really are. Many people don't have the ability to take a week off without pay, and so they get faced, whether it's a COVID-19 pandemic or just general illness. A lot of working families don't have the ability to take the time off and recover and not spread that illness around. So, paid sick leave has really come to the forefront of our public needs. As for what we have done differently, this is uncharted territory. Washington State was ground zero for the outbreak. I think that the data will show that swift and aggressive action makes a difference. And I am hopeful that we will continue to push forward with the safety measures that we have in place to try to make sure our economic recovery is sustainable. And that's going to include social distancing. It's going to include mask use and doing everything we can to make sure that we can maintain as much normalcy as possible.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Mr. Walsh. How do you suggest the state handle the budget due to decreased revenues? And other than basic education, are there any services that are off limits for being reduced or eliminated?
Well, we're going to have to revise our budgets because of the governor's lockdown and the damage that it's done to the economy of the state. So what we need to do in Olympia, and it's going to be tough work over the next couple of years, is focus on what the budget specialists call programmatic cuts. So not across the board cuts like the governor's asked for, but what we're going to have to do is prioritize specific activities and programs of each state agency. And, we've done this before. We did it recently when we did a great job in a bipartisan way of restructuring the state's transportation budget in the light of the $30 car tabs initiative that passed. We were able to reprioritize transportation budget projects in a way that met the financial needs and the new reality of that initiative passing, and we were able to unfreeze the essential road and bridge projects that the governor had frozen. So that's a good example of what we'll have to do across the board in the operating budget, in the transportation budget, and to a certain extent in the capital budget, which is financed differently and may be able to operate a little differently. But definitely the focus will be on programmatic, prioritized cuts and trims of projects and programs in the operating and transportation budgets. So that's the key. And when people say you can't cut, it's not true. All we have to do to make up for the $9 billion that the governor's caused in hardship on our budget is trim the budgets back to the 2016, 2017 levels. It's not hard to do at all.
Thank you. Mr. Bryson, same question.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, and you mentioned basic education, much of our state budget is constitutionally protected. So we're dealing with a smaller portion that we can actually make cuts to. Safety and health come to mind as areas that we need to make sure we maintain services at a proper level. Home health care is one that I've had discussions about, protecting our vulnerable populations. But clearly there are going to be some difficult choices to make. As those choices are being made, I would suggest that we need to make sure we continue to invest in infrastructure. The more we can invest in infrastructure and help our economy get back on track, the stronger the economic recovery will be. And that's actually that can help us more than we could possibly cut from the budget. So, definitely there will be difficult choices, but we have to identify things that are going to help us recover. And I see infrastructure as one of those key needs.
Ms. Everson, same question.
This is where I differ from both the other candidates. I will not tolerate cuts to the budget in the state where two of the three richest men in the world live. We are funding our state off the backs of working people, and that is completely wrong. We have the most upside down, regressive tax system in the country, and we have to go where the money is. We must start taxing people who have the money, bring in the revenue, keep the services that we have, and build on that, because people are homeless, people are dying, people are sick, and people can't find out where their next meal is in the state of Washington, and that is not okay with me.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Bryson. Given the current increase in online student learning and telemedicine, what can the legislature do to address the inequity for rural areas without coverage and to increase access to the internet?
Well, I think that this crisis has magnified those needs, but we had the needs for increased broadband access even before COVID came along. You know, inequities in learning opportunities, it's actually a strong economic development tool for those that want to have small businesses in our more rural areas. But the problem with the broadband access is often you hear to as the last mile is very expensive. So I know the state has formed a broadband office. I'm not sure exactly where they're at in the process there as far as their studies, but I think our best route to actually succeed on this is to look for opportunities to encourage the providers to take it that extra mile. If they're not able to do it, then I think our PUDs are somebody that we should be talking to about partnering to bring that service, because in this day and age, broadband access really is a necessary utility.
Thank you. Ms. Everson, same question.
Yes, I think that we should have broadband for all through our PUDs as well. I think a lot about how the private sector fails us, how big companies and big corporations, they take their profits and they leave the rest of us out. So yes, we need to fund the PUDs to connect every person in Washington to broadband, just like we did when we electrified America in the last century.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, same question. Do we have Mr. Walsh?
It's been a complete, you talk about politics, and it's just one of the craziest political turf wars imaginable. We have the right system for funding rural broadband through the Community Economic Revitalization Board, known as CURB. But the governors fight, some of the legislators in his own party to relocate the rural broadband projects in the Public Works Trust Fund, and the Public Works has been just terrible. And it has split. So we need to focus the effort in a single channel and let that be the focus and the main pipeline for improving our rural broadband infrastructure. It's not rocket science, but we're splitting up the effort in Olympia in a terrible way, and that has to stop.
Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Everson. What transportation and/or capital projects would you propose or support to benefit your district?
Yes, for me, we need to keep our transit systems free as they are right now. We need to keep our roads, improving our roads, and we need to increase our capabilities for hospitals. I worked in a hospital in this district, and it struggles year to year, day to day to keep its doors open. So I would invest in our hospitals and keep our people who experience poverty in some transportation by increasing and expanding the transit systems.
Mr. Walsh, same question.
Oh, it's easy and quick. The iWow interchange project in Longview and the East Aberdeen mobility project in Grays Harbor. Those are the top two transportation infrastructure projects we need completed as soon as possible. Those are my two top priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Bryson?
Thank you. I agree that the mobility project in Aberdeen is a very important one, as is the Longview project. I think we also need to be looking at rail capacity. We have some wonderful ports in this district, and we need to make sure that they continue to be the economic engines we need them to be. And we can't allow bottlenecks in the transportation system to harm that. It's also good for citizens too, if our roads aren't backed up and we don't have unnecessary delays. So I think that we need to keep funding those projects that are going to allow our business to continue and make sure that we don't have long backups because of it.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Mr. Walsh. After all the work done in recent years to change the model for basic education funding and keep our constitutional commitment, how do you see the situation now? Are there areas of school funding that still need to be worked on?
That's easy. We've fixed the wrong part of the education budget and funding system. What we need to do is blow up the prototypical school budget model. That's the problem. The McCleary decision focused on how we collect money for K-12 in the state. And that's resolved, at least according to the state Supreme Court it is. But the real problem for the schools in our area isn't how you collect the money, it's how you distribute the money. And the prototypical school budget model, which is OSPI's favorite device, is terrible for smaller school districts. And it's the reason, if you talk to your the half of a counselor or the third of a bus driver. So we need to blow up the prototypical school funding model and replace it with a simpler base funding model for each school district, and then a per student allocation on top of that. Let's get rid of prototypical school budget model.
Thank you. Mr. Bryson, same question.
The way our schools are funded now, our smaller, less affluent districts struggle to meet the needs above what the state considers basic education. The levy system creates a disproportionate burden on our smaller systems, or excuse me, our smaller schools. So I think that we really need to take a look at that on how funds are allocated and make sure that we're providing equitable education throughout the whole state.
Ms. Everson, same question.
Well, these answers are music to my ears. I kind of agree with parts of each of those men's answers. We definitely need to stop funding the schools off the backs of the people that live in poverty-stricken districts. We need to fund our state equitably by maybe pulling everything together and making it fair for each kid to get the right opportunity that they need in every way that they need it. So yes, we need to totally redo that funding and make sure that we are making sure that our kids in every district in Washington have the same opportunities, or all the opportunities that they need individually.
Thank you. Next question will go first to Mr. Bryson. Apparently, the Employment Security Department was overwhelmed with the onslaught of unemployment claims. What can be done to avoid this in the future? And are there other state systems at similar risk? Yeah,
that's been a major problem. The system was not designed to handle the sheer volume of new claims that it received. I don't think it would have been possible. It wouldn't have been responsible to have enough employees on hand because we didn't need them until the COVID crisis hit. Much of it was automated to try to make it function with less employees, and that became a real burden as well. Through my job, I've worked with many of our members of the union I work for, trying to help them through it. And I think that the real answer on that is the vulnerabilities and security caused some major problems. And I don't know, I hear a lot of people asking whether or not the director should be replaced. I don't have enough information to answer that question. I will say it's reasonable to expect all of our directors to perform at a top level. I do have serious concerns that other state systems would have similar vulnerabilities. I think that's something we need to look at as soon as possible, because clearly the money that was stolen from the state could have been put to much better use. So we can't afford to lose any more from any other programs.
Thank you. Ms. Everson, same question.
This brings to mind working in systems. So for one way that we could do this is, as well as discussing the security issues, that's totally unacceptable. As another way we could do it is we can cross-train people to know the jobs that are outside of their departments. So we could quickly bring people in to help in one system that needs a special focus, and maybe another system someone doesn't have as much to do because there aren't as many people to serve in that system. So that would be one way we could do it. We could make sure that people know at least a piece of the other system so that they can jump in and help out. But we definitely do not want to get ourselves caught in this situation ever again. We need to be prepared. We are in a pandemic now, and it's not going to be the last one. This is going to happen again in our lifetimes, to where we need a rapid response. So I would definitely like to talk about preparing a rapid response team for any situation that we come up across.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Well, here's a rapid response. ESD Commissioner Susie Levine should be fired immediately. The gross mismanagement and negligence in the operating of that State Department and the idea now being proposed that we're going to increase the payroll tax by 3 times to make up for this incompetence is adding insult to injury. There is no way that the state payroll tax should be increased to make up for the incompetent mismanagement at ESD. That commissioner should be fired. A crisis manager should be brought in. And I don't want to hear the governor blathering on in his press conferences about how they're catching up a backlog of unpaid claims. A backlog needs to be eliminated ASAP. And as long as the current management is in place, they're going to slow play this. And that's just shocking. This is a signature failure on the part of the current administration. And the idea that this commissioner is still in her job is an insult to all Washingtonians.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Everson. Referendum 90 would repeal Senate Bill 5395, which addresses comprehensive sexual health education in public schools. Do you feel that 5395 should be repealed, and why or why not?
As the mother of 6 and a nurse, a scientist, I understand the value that that bill would bring to our children. Parents can opt out of that education, so if that's their choice, that's their choice. That's okay. But our children need to have, the children that choose to take the education need to have that information for a happy and healthy life. One of the major things that I think of when I think of improving kids at their age level or appropriate sexual education is that kids might know sooner if someone is being inappropriate with them and be able to speak up. They might know sooner that that attention is not okay, and they'd be able to talk to their teacher or counselor about that, or their nurse or whoever. I want to save kids from that situation as soon as possible, and having this education would help to do that. At least even if it only helped one child get out of that situation, it would be enough.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Well, I'm proud to have been one of the co-sponsors of Referendum 90, and I worked hard to make sure that it received the record number of signatures of support from Washingtonians, a record number, more than any referendum has ever had. So this shows that the people of Washington are opposed to this terrible, terrible comp sex ed scheme. But leaving aside the poor qualities of the scheme, it's important to point out that this centralizes curriculum choice with the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. And that's a terrible precedent. We need to keep curriculum choices at the local level, made by elected school. And that's why you're going to see just a wave of support for Referendum 90 this fall. And I think it's a great thing.
Mr. Bryson?
So I understand these can be difficult topics to discuss. I have 3 daughters. I get it. It can be uncomfortable. And ideally, this information will be taught at home. But unfortunately, it's not always the case. And we need to make sure that we have fact-based education available to make sure we keep our children safe. It needs to be age appropriate, it needs to be accurate. That being said, I do trust local school boards to make this decision for their own district. And I trust parents to make the decision for what's right for their family. You know, it's going to go to referendum this fall. I respect the right of the voters to decide. But I do think that it's important that we have good fact-based information available.
Thank you. Okay, this will be the final question, and it's somewhat lengthy and involved, so you may want to pause to think here. Mr. Walsh, we'll start. What kinds of policies to improve job growth, strengthen the state economy, and reduce economic disparities will you champion in the next state legislature session? How do you propose to get support from other legislators given majority minority roles and the changing makeup of the House? Mr. Walsh.
Is that it, Sarah? That's easy.
That's it.
Wow. I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing for 4 years, and that is insist on reform at the permitting and regulatory agencies that are choking the lifeblood out of our economy in the 19th. That is primarily the Department of Ecology, but to a lesser extent, and then L&I. So it's a matter of permitting. It's a matter of radicals pushing a radical agenda to kill commerce in rural Washington. And I will happily continue the fight to streamline our permitting process and get that bad influence of a handful of what we call, BMW communists who are pushing their radical agendas off of the backs of business in the 19th. It's the reason I was elected 4 years ago. It was the reason I ran 2 years ago, and it's the reason I'm going to continue to run, to defend the traditional industries and culture of our part of the state. It's the essential fight in Olympia, and I'm going to keep leading that charge. Happy to do it. That was an easy one, Sharon.
Mr. Bryson, same question.
So you've heard me say it already, but we need more investment in infrastructure and education. Creating jobs in this district is the best thing we can do for our citizens to improve our local economies. It's good for everyone. It's important to look at development in Washington State and realize that we build things cleaner and safer than anywhere else in the world. And we need to, when we're considering these projects, we need to recognize that, because pollution doesn't know any borders. And when we push these projects off to other parts of the world, we lose the ability to have an influence on it. I will say that the permitting processes need some reform. When standards are met and when the rules are laid out and companies meet those rules, they should be allowed to proceed without undue restrictions on receiving their permits. So I think that's my answer, is just to keep investing in what it's going to take to create jobs and look for opportunities to be a part of the solution.
Ms. Everson?
Would you please repeat the question?
Certainly, it was kind of lengthy. What kinds of policies to improve job growth, strengthen the state economy, and reduce economic disparities will you champion in the next legislative session? How do you propose to get support from other legislators given majority and minority roles and the changing makeup of the House?
Thank you. So I don't drive a BMW, I drive a Nissan Leaf, but I guess I'm one of those radicals that Jim's talking about. I definitely think we need some radical change. We've had 10 years to do things that will reduce our impact on this planet. And I don't care who says it, we have to make some radical changes. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to be a fight, but we must. We can create millions of jobs in a green economy that may not fit exactly in the traditional sense that we've had, but that's the thing. We must change. We have to change. Or we're going to leave a planet to our children and grandchildren that is increasingly more uninhabitable, with wars over water and all kinds of ugly things. You think COVID is bad? We're created COVID by having climate change. So let's not continue down this road where our kids and grandkids are going to have a life where they struggle even more than we are now.
Thank you. And now we will go to the closing statements, 2 minutes each, starting with Mr. Walsh.
Well, thanks, Sharon. Thanks to the League for putting this together. It's always good to talk policy. For a long time, representatives from this part of the state, the 19th, but some other districts too, have tried to follow a policy of sort of go along to get along and don't rock the boat. 4 years ago, when the people of the 19th sent me to Olympia, we changed that plan to a more aggressive, boat-rocking approach. And I think it's worked well for us. We've been able to stop some of the worst policy ideas coming through Olympia, gun control bills, more radical environmental stuff, permitting, red tape explosion. We've been able to push back against all of that. And I've been happy to be part of that pushing back. So if you want someone to continue to fight for the industries and people and values and traditions of our part of Washington, please vote for me. I will be happy to continue to fight the good fight for you in Olympia. It's still fun, and I think we're still doing good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Everson, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Sharon, and all the other participants in this. It's been a really good time, a great experience, and I appreciate the time to talk to voters. I am a registered nurse. I've been serving the exact communities of this district in a mental health capacity and as a critical care nurse. And I really feel like my experience working as a nurse and having experienced poverty myself prior to that is what's prepared me to be the representative that people need. I'm not going to sit back and let cuts happen to programs that keep people alive. It's not going to happen. My focus is on the people, not the big business, not corporations. I don't take any dirty money from any corporate PACs or special interest groups. This campaign is powered by the people and only the people. So hopefully you will go to my website, mariannaforthepeople.com, check out my platform, and vote for me up to August 4th. I hope to be your representative. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this on today. Appreciate it. As I've spoken with people throughout the district, there's a couple things that really rise to the top in those conversations, regardless of their political leanings. First is how deeply people care about their communities and how engaged they are in their local issues. And I think that's important to recognize that. The other is that they're tired of the political division. They want to see people get work done. They don't really care as much about party politics as they do results. So I'm running to be the representative that I want to vote for. I'm running to go to Olympia and represent our district, recognizing that what makes this district special. You know, we need to protect our forestry industries, our fisheries, our shellfish. Those are all traditional things that we can't forget about as we're looking for new solutions as well. I know how fortunate I've been to be able to choose to stay here and raise my family, and I want to provide that opportunity for others. In order to be effective in Olympia, you have to be able to cut through the rhetoric and have some honest conversations and have some compromise and get some work done. That's what people expect. And my background has prepared me to do that. That's what I've been doing the last several years. I also have a unique background of coming up to the blue collar ranks. You know, I'm someone who has had to navigate the unemployment system for short-term needs, who's been injured on the job, wondering what that was going to mean for my family's well-being as I sat in the emergency room, you know, on a workers' comp claim, getting hurt on the job. And it's just, I've also been that person that had to go to work despite being injured or hurting, because that's just what I had to do. I didn't have any other options. So I know that I've been very fortunate to gain valuable experience that I want to put to work for the citizens of the 19th. And I'm ready to be that voice in Olympia, fighting for the 19th's needs. I'm Clint Bryson. I'm running to be your state representative, and I hope you will join us. I can be contacted at electclintbryson.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank all the candidates for participating. I would like to thank KLTV for live streaming, for technical design, and providing links to share. This has been our 4th forum. We have one more on Thursday at 3 o'clock for the 20th Legislative District Position 1 representative. Remember that primary ballots will be mailed out this weekend and must be placed in drop-off boxes or postmarked no later than Election Day, which is August 4th. Again, thank you all for viewing our forum.
Thank you.